Close your eyes for a moment and allow the quiet of your surroundings to soften into something older, heavier, with memory. Imagine standing at the edge of a wide river under a pale wash of dawn. You're about to step into Babylon at the height of its power sometime in the 6th century before the Common Era. The air feels cool against your skin, still touched by the night. A faint scent of damp earth rises from the banks of the Euphrates, mingling with the sweetness of date palms and the lingering smoke of oil lamps that have burned through the darkness. For a moment you hear only the slow movement of water. Then other sounds begin to gather. Sandals scuff softly along packed clay streets. A donkey brays somewhere beyond your view. Farther away, a bronze bell rings from a temple courtyard, its tone clear and deliberate. The city does not awaken all at once. It breathes itself gradually into motion like a great creature stretching after sleep. Pale light begins to touch the distant rooftops, turning mud brick walls into muted shades of gold. You stand at the river's edge and watch a small boat drift toward the quay. A man wrapped in wool adjusts the sail with careful hands. He looks tired yet purposeful. Around you, figures move with quiet urgency. Women carry woven baskets balanced against their hips. A child runs past with a laugh that breaks the solemn hush. Smoke curls upward from a nearby hearth, carrying the faint aroma of barley porridge warming over coals. You realize that this is not merely a city awakening, it is the center of an empire. Babylon stands here as one of the most influential urban landscapes of the ancient world, its walls enclosing both wealth and wonder. Archaeological excavations conducted by teams associated with institutions such as Yale and Oxford have revealed immense foundations, broad avenues and complex drainage systems that speak of careful planning. Clay tablets unearthed from beneath layers of dust confirm a sophisticated bureaucracy that regulated trade taxation and temple offerings. To your left, the riverbank slopes gently upward toward the first line of houses. Their surfaces feel rough beneath your fingertips, sun-baked and cracked in places. Wooden shutters creak open one by one. You hear murmured greetings exchanged in the local tongue. The cadence of conversation carries a sense of familiarity that transcends centuries. It feels as though you've entered not only a different time, but a rhythm of life shaped by long tradition. Records confirm that the Euphrates served as Babylon's lifeline, bringing grain, timber and stone from distant regions. Barges travelled its currents daily, sustaining a population that may have reached hundreds of thousands at its peak. Yet oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved on a damaged tablet describes complaints from citizens about the constant noise of cargo being unloaded before sunrise. Even in antiquity, urban living carried its small irritations. As the sky brightens, the outlines of larger structures emerge beyond the clustered homes. You glimpse the rising silhouette of a ziggurat tiered like a man-made mountain. Its upper levels remain shrouded in mist, lending it an almost dreamlike presence. Priests will soon climb its steep stairways to perform morning rituals. The thought sends a quiet thrill through you. Here, religion is not confined to private belief. It shapes public space, guiding both the architecture and the daily habits of those who dwell within these walls. Your mind lingers on a question that historians continue to debate. Some argue that Babylon's impressive urban layout resulted primarily from royal decree. Others suggest that generations of incremental adaptation played an equal role. Arguments split along disciplinary lines, with urban archaeologists emphasizing material evidence, while textual scholars focus on administrative records. As you stand in this unfolding dawn, the debate feels almost secondary to the vivid reality before your eyes. A gentle breeze lifts strands of your hair. It carries the faint fragrance of garden herbs growing behind unseen walls. Somewhere close by, a goat bleats impatiently. You follow the sound along a narrow path and discover a small enclosure where an elderly woman pours water into a clay trough. She glances up briefly, her expression calm, then returns to her task. Life here is both monumental and intimate, shaped by empire, yet sustained by countless personal routines. Light spills more boldly across the rooftops now. The city's colours deepen. Ochre walls glow. Reed mats laid across courtyards begin to warm beneath the strengthening sun. You notice the subtle textures of daily existence. A cracked pot carefully mended with bitumen. A woven garment drying on a line. The metallic tang of tools stacked near a doorway, ready for the labour ahead. Each detail forms part of a vast tapestry that has endured through conquest, renewal, and the slow erosion of time. For a moment you pause and listen again to the river. Its steady murmur feels reassuring, almost like a companion guiding you forward. You sense that this journey through Babylon will reveal more than monumental grandeur. It will uncover the human experiences hidden beneath imperial triumphs. The laughter of children, the worries of merchants, the solemn chants of priests all blend into a living symphony. In your ears, the echo of the temple bell returns softer now, as if inviting you deeper into the city. The streets beyond the riverbank begin to fill with motion. Traders roll carts towards the markets. Labourers shoulder bundles of reeds. A group of young scribes passes by, their clay tablets tucked carefully under their arms. Their quiet concentration hints at the knowledge systems that underpin this vast society. You take a final glance at the flowing Euphrates, aware that it will remain a constant presence throughout your exploration. Then you step onto the rising path toward Babylon's interior, ready to witness how this ancient metropolis truly lives at the height of its glory. The path draws you gradually away from the river's cool breath and into the widening arteries of Babylon itself. Morning has fully arrived now. Sunlight spreads across the city like a slow, unfurling banner, illuminating surfaces that only moments ago seemed wrapped in mystery. You walk with measured steps, feeling the ground firm beneath your sandals. The clay street is packed smooth by generations of passing feet, carts and animals. Dust rises in faint golden veils each time someone hurries past. Ahead, a sound grows steadily louder. Voices overlap in casual greeting. Hooves strike rhythmically against stone. Somewhere metal clinks against metal. The city's energy gathers here at a monumental threshold that soon comes into view. You find yourself standing before one of Babylon's most celebrated entrances, the Ishtar Gate towering above you in astonishing hues of glazed blue. Its surface gleams under the strengthening sun like a fragment of sky brought down to earth. For a moment it feels as though time itself pauses while you absorb the sight. Rows of moulded reliefs march across the gate's face. Lions stride forward with deliberate grace. Mythical bulls and dragon-like creatures follow in stately procession. Their forms seem almost alive, animated by the light that dances across their glazed contours. A council decree from the reign of Nebuchadnezzar confirms that this gateway formed part of a grand ceremonial route used during religious festivals. The inscription praises the king's devotion to the goddess Ishtar, whose protective presence was believed to sanctify the city's entrances. You move closer, reaching out to touch the brickwork. The glaze feels unexpectedly smooth cool, despite the rising warmth of the day. A guard stands nearby, leaning on a long spear. His posture is relaxed, yet attentive. He watches the stream of travellers entering the gate with the calm assurance of someone accustomed to constant movement. Babylon does not shut itself away from the world. It draws people inward, inviting trade, tribute, and curiosity. Beyond the gate, the processional way stretches forward in a broad, carefully paved avenue. Its surface is darker than the surrounding streets, set with large stone slabs imported from distant quarries. You notice how the width of the road encourages both spectacle and order. Caravans pass without congestion. Groups of priests in white linen garments walk in measured formation, their sandals making soft tapping sounds against the stone. Perfumed smoke drifts from a nearby shrine carrying notes of myrrh and cedar that linger pleasantly in the air. Records preserved in temple archives reveal that the construction of these monumental avenues required extensive logistical planning. Engineers coordinated the transport of materials across vast distances, while labourers worked in rotating teams to complete the paving. A curious footnote from a later period mentions that children once slid along the polished stones during festivals, much to the annoyance of elders tasked with maintaining decorum. Even grandeur could become a playground in quieter moments. You follow the avenue with growing fascination. Tall walls rise on either side, punctuated by painted reliefs that depict hunting scenes and sacred symbols. Their colours have softened slightly with age, yet they still convey a sense of an imperial confidence. This is a space designed to impress both citizens and visitors. Each architectural choice communicates power, stability, and divine favour. You feel the intention almost physically, as though the city itself is speaking through its materials. Yet scholars continue to argue over how ordinary residents perceived such displays. Some suggest that these monumental structures fostered genuine civic pride, strengthening loyalty to the ruling dynasty. Others contend that they served primarily as instruments of propaganda, reinforcing social hierarchies through spectacle. No agreement has been reached on whether admiration or quiet resentment dominated the hearts of those who walked these same stones centuries ago. As you move deeper into the city, the processional way begins to fill with varied life. A merchant leads a pair of laden donkeys, their woven packs bulging with dyed textiles. The animals snort softly, shaking their ears as flies circle in the warming light. Nearby, a group of foreign travellers pauses to examine the reliefs along the wall. Their clothing differs subtly from that of the locals. Bright embroidery catches your eye. You hear unfamiliar accents woven into their conversation. Babylon stands not only as a political capital, but as a crossroads of cultures. Your attention drifts upward again to the immense gate receding behind you. From this angle, its blue facade glows even more vividly framed by the dusty tones of surrounding structures. The contrast feels intentional, almost theatrical. It marks the boundary between outer world and inner sanctum, between the uncertainties of distant lands and the ordered magnificence of the imperial city. A breeze carries the distant hum of activity from markets further ahead. You sense that the avenue will soon lead you into spaces less formal yet equally revealing. Here, monumental architecture yields gradually to the rhythms of commerce and conviviality. The transition feels natural, like the turning of a page in a story written across stone and sunlit dust. You pause briefly in the shadow of a wall, letting the coolness settle around you. For a heartbeat, you listen to the layered sounds of Babylon awakening in full. Hooves, laughter, chanting, bargaining calls all blend into a vibrant chorus. The city no longer feels distant or legendary. It feels immediate, tangible, alive beneath your wandering gaze. With a steady breath, you step forward once more along the processional way, ready to discover what lies beyond its grand ceremonial promise. The great avenue narrows almost without warning, as though guiding you gently from the realm of royal spectacle into the living pulse of the city. The wide stone slabs beneath your feet give way once more to packed earth, softer and warmer, now beneath the rising sun. You notice the shift immediately, not only in texture but in sound. Formal footsteps and ritual chants fade behind you. In their place comes a layered murmur of voices, animal calls, laughter, and the unmistakable cadence of bargaining. You are entering the Marquis of Babylon. A canopy of woven reeds stretches overhead in places, filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns of gold and shadow. Dust hangs faintly in the air, stirred by a movement. The scent here is richer, more complex than anything you have encountered so far. Spices mingle with sweat, incense, and the metallic tang of newly forged tools. Somewhere close by, bread bakes in a clay oven. Its warm aroma drifts toward you, comforting in its familiarity despite the centuries that separate you from this moment. Your eyes move from stall to stall, trying to take in the abundance. Piles of dates glisten like polished amber. Baskets overflow with figs, lentils and pale green herbs still damp from irrigation channels outside the city. Brightly dyed textiles ripple in the breeze, their patterns catching the light in sudden flashes of colour. Bronze vessels are arranged in neat rows, reflecting the sun like small captured flames. Records confirm that Babylon's marketplaces functioned as vital economic engines for the empire. Clay tablets discovered by researchers associated with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford detail contracts for grain deliveries, livestock sales, and long-distance trade agreements. These inscriptions reveal not only commercial sophistication, but a legal framework designed to regulate fair exchange. You sense the presence of that system here woven invisibly into each transaction unfolding before your eyes. A merchant beckons you closer with an eager smile. He gestures toward a collection of lapis lazuli beads, their deep blue surfaces flecked with gold. You pick one up carefully, feeling its unexpected weight and cool smoothness. The stone has travelled far, perhaps from mines beyond the eastern mountains. Trade routes stretch across deserts and rivers to bring such treasures into this crowded square. The thought fills you with quiet awe. Babylon is not isolated. It is connected to a world of distant landscapes and unseen journeys. Oddly so enough, a curious aside recorded in a fragmentary tablet mentions that some vendors resorted to sprinkling water over dusty goods to make them appear fresher than they truly were. Urban ingenuity, it seems, has always found subtle ways to shape perception. You watch now as a young boy flies away from a display of melons, his movements swift and practiced. Commerce here is not merely exchange, it is performance. The crowd thickens as the morning progresses. Shoulders brush lightly against yours. Snatches of conversation reach your ears in overlapping rhythms. You hear laughter punctuated by a mock outrage during a spirited negotiation. Nearby, a woman tests the balance of a bronze knife, turning it thoughtfully in her hands before nodding in satisfaction. Each gesture speaks a lived experience of knowledge passed quietly from generation to generation. Scholars continue to dispute the extent to which Babylonian markets operated under strict state supervision. Some argue that royal officials maintained constant oversight to ensure taxation and order. Others suggest that informal networks of trust played a greater role in sustaining daily trade. Arguments divide along methodological lines, with economic historians emphasizing textual evidence, while anthropologists point to patterns observed in comparable ancient societies. Standing here amid the vibrant chaos, you sense how difficult it must be to capture the full complexity of such a place in scholarly debate. You pause beside a stool where a potter arranges freshly fired bowls. Their surfaces are warm, still holding the memory of the kiln. He invites you to run your fingers along the curved rim. The clay feels slightly rough-textured by the craftsman's touch. A faint smell of smoke clings to it, mingling with the sharper scent of bitumen used to seal storage jars nearby. The sensory richness of the market surrounds you completely, leaving little room for detached observation. Further along, musicians gather near a fountain fed by a narrow canal. One plucks a stringed instrument with practiced ease, producing notes that ripple through the air like water itself. Children cluster around, clapping in uneven rhythm. A dog darts between them, tail wagging wildly. The scene feels both ordinary and deeply evocative. Life here unfolds with a vitality that transcends monumental architecture and imperial ambition. Your mind drifts briefly to the monumental gate now far behind you. Its grandeur seems distant compared to the immediacy of these human interactions. Here in the heart of commerce, Babylon reveals another facet of its identity. It is not only a symbol of power, it is a place where countless individual stories intersect, where survival and aspiration mingle in the exchange of goods and glances. A breeze stirs the reed canopy above. Light shifts again, dappling the ground in restless patterns. You realize that hours could pass unnoticed in this labyrinth of color and sound. Yet the city beckons you onward. Beyond the market lie quieter spaces, where daily life takes on more intimate forms. with a final look at the bustling stalls and the glittering beads still resting in the merchant's palm, you turn and follow a narrower lane that winds away from the crowd. The market's hum fades gradually behind you, replaced by softer echoes and the promise of new discoveries waiting just beyond the next bend. The narrow lane draws you away from the lively currents of trade and into a quieter realm where the city's rhythm slows almost imperceptibly. Here the air feels stiller, carrying only faint traces of spice and smoke that linger from the market behind you. Sunlight slips gently between the upper edges of mud brick walls, forming pale ribbons that guide your steps forward. The ground beneath your sandals is smoother than before, swept regularly by unseen hands. You pass a doorway covered by a simple woven curtain. A woman's voice murmurs softly inside, followed by the light patter of children's feet. The sound is intimate, domestic, and comforting in its familiarity. For a moment it feels as though you are walking through any neighbourhood in any age, guided not by monumental ambition, but by the quiet continuity of family life. You reach an open gate that leads into a small courtyard. Hesitating only briefly, you step inside. The space reveals itself as a sheltered world of its own. Reed mats cover sections of the packed earth floor. A clay oven stands near one wall, its rounded surface darkened by years of fire. A pomegranate tree spreads slender branches overhead, casting shifting shadows that dance across the ground with each passing breeze. A council decree preserved on a tablet from this era confirms that many Babylonian houses were built around such interior courtyards. This design offered protection from both summer heat and the noise of crowded streets. Excavations conducted by researchers linked to institutions like Yale and Oxford have uncovered foundations that match these descriptions, suggesting a standardized yet adaptable approach to urban domestic architecture. You sit for a moment on a low wooden bench, feeling its surface worn smooth by generations of use. The texture beneath your fingers tells a story of daily rituals repeated countless times. Nearby, a young girl grinds grain with slow, steady movements. The stone tool emits a soft scraping sound that blends with the distant murmur of the city beyond the walls. Her mother kneads dough beside the oven, dusting her hands with flour that catches the sunlight like drifting pollen. Oddly enough, a curious footnote recorded by a temple scribe mentions that disputes sometimes arose over the planting of trees within shared courtyards. Neighbours argued about falling leaves clogging drainage channels, or branches shading valuable sunlight. Even in a city famed for its grandeur, the smallest domestic concerns could spark lively debate. You rise and walk toward a shallow basin filled with water drawn from a nearby canal. Its surface reflects fragments of sky and the blurred outline of rooftops. You dip your fingers into the cool liquid and feel a quiet sense of renewal. Water here is precious, carefully managed through networks of irrigation that sustain both agriculture and urban households. Clay pipes hidden beneath the ground carry life into spaces like this one, transforming dusty enclosures into havens of shade and sustenance. Scholars continue to question how social hierarchy shaped the layout of such homes. Some propose that wealthier families enjoyed larger courtyards and multiple storage rooms, while poorer residents lived in more cramped conditions along peripheral streets. No consensus has emerged on whether architectural differences alone can reveal the full complexity of Babylonian class structures. As you look around this modest yet functional space, you sense how easily material evidence might obscure personal narratives. A faint scent of crushed herbs drifts from a bundle hanging near the doorway. You recognize notes of mint and perhaps coriander. The aroma mingles with the earthy warmth of sunlit brick, creating a sensory tapestry that feels both grounding and timeless. You notice a woven basket filled with dyed wool resting in one corner. Its vibrant threads hint at work yet to be completed, garments waiting to be shaped by skilled hands. Beyond the courtyard, another passage leads deeper into the residential quarter. You follow it slowly, listening to the subtle sounds that define this part of the city. A loom creaks rhythmically behind a wall. Someone hums a tune whose melody rises and falls like a gentle tide. A goat tugs impatiently at a tether, its hooves scraping against stone. Each detail contributes to a portrait of life lived not for spectacle but for continuity. You pause beside a window opening that frames a sliver of the street. Through it you glimpse a group of elderly men seated on low stools sharing conversation in unhurried tones. Their gestures are measured, their laughter soft. Time seems to move differently here, shaped by memory and routine rather than urgency. For a moment your thoughts return to the bustling market you left behind. The contrast feels striking. Their energy surged outward in waves of commerce and ambition. Here it settles inward, nurturing bonds that sustain the city's human fabric. Babylon's greatness does not reside solely in its gates or temples. It lives equally within these shaded courtyards where families gather at dusk and dawn alike. The sun climbs higher now, warming the walls until they release a faint baked scent. Shadows shorten. Somewhere beyond the rooftops a temple bell rings again, its tone carried on a breeze that slips gently through the lanes. You realize that the sacred and the domestic are never far apart in this city. Each sphere shapes the other, forming an intricate balance between devotion and daily necessity. With a quiet breath, you step back through the courtyard gate and continue along the winding path. Ahead, the silhouette of a towering structure begins to rise above the clustered homes. Its massive tiers catch the light in solemn bands of ochre and gold. You sense that you are approaching a place where private life yields once more to the collective rituals that define Babylon's spiritual heart. The path widens again as you move beyond the intimate maze of courtyards, guiding you towards a space where the atmosphere subtly shifts. You feel it first in the quality of the air. It carries a sharper fragrance, now thick with incense and faint traces of burned resin. The sounds around you change as well. Domestic murmurs give way to measured footsteps, low chanting, and the occasional resonant clang of a bronze. Ahead, the immense form of temple complex rises into view. Its outer walls are taller than any dwelling you have passed, constructed from sun-baked brick that glows softly beneath the midday sun. You pause at the threshold of a broad courtyard, your eyes drawn upward as to the towering ziggurat that dominates the scene. Tier upon tier ascends toward the sky, each level slightly smaller than the one below, forming a monumental staircase that seems to bridge earth and heaven. For a moment it feels as though the city itself has grown quiet in reverence. A line of priests in pale garments moves slowly across the courtyard, their steps synchronized in practiced harmony. They carry shallow bowls from which curls of scented smoke drift upward in languid spirals. The fragrance settles gently around you, warm and slightly sweet. You inhale and sense a calmness that contrasts with the bustling energy of the market you left behind. Records confirm that Babylonian temples functioned not only as places of worship, but as administrative and economic centers. Tablets uncovered by archaeological teams associated with institutions such as Oxford and Yale describe temple officials overseeing land holdings, distributing rations, and coordinating large-scale building projects. Here, spirituality and governance intertwine so closely that separating them becomes nearly impossible. You follow a stone-paved path that leads toward the base of the ziggurat. Its bricks feel warm beneath your palm when you touch them, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of sun and ritual procession. A group of labourers ascends the steep steps carrying baskets of offerings. Their breathing is steady, their expressions composed. The climb itself seems to form part of the sacred experience, a physical journey mirroring an inner ascent towards divine presence. Oddly enough, one curious aside preserved in a fragmentary inscription suggests that certain priests were known to compete quietly over who could perform the most elaborate ceremonial gestures. Rivalries, it seems, could flourish even within the solemn framework of religious duty. You watch now as two young acolytes adjust the folds of their garments with meticulous care, each glance hinting at unspoken comparison. At the summit terrace, a small shrine catches the full brilliance of the sun, Its doorway is framed by carved symbols representing celestial forces. You do not enter. Instead, you remain at a respectful distance, observing the ritual from below. A chant begins low and rhythmic, rising gradually into a resonant harmony that seems to vibrate through the very stones. The sound carries across the courtyard, mingling with the rustle of linen robes and the soft hiss of incense on hot coals. Scholars continue to debate the precise theological meaning of these ceremonies. Some argue that they symbolized a cosmic dialogue between human and divine realms. Others maintain that their primary function lay in reinforcing social cohesion and royal authority. No unified interpretation has yet satisfied all perspectives, leaving room for speculation and renewed study. Standing here, you sense how the lived experience of ritual might transcend theoretical explanation. Your attention drifts toward a shaded colonnade where scribes sit cross-legged with clay tablets resting on their knees. They record offerings brought by citizens, pressing wedge-shaped marks into damp surfaces with swift, practiced motions. The faint scraping sound of styluses accompanies the chant like an understated counterpoint. Knowledge, devotion, and administration converge seamlessly within this sacred precinct. A breeze moves through the open courtyard, stirring loose strands of hair against your cheek. It carries the mingled scents of wax smoke, sun-warmed brick, and distant garden herbs growing beyond the temple walls. You realize that even in this place of solemn ceremony, the sensory richness of Babylon persists. Life here does not pause for worship. It adapts, weaving sacred rhythms into the flow of everyday existence. You notice a small group of ordinary citizens gathered near an altar at ground level. They place simple offerings of grain and flowers into a shallow basin, their gestures quiet yet deeply intentional. Their presence reminds you that religious practice in Babylon extends beyond monumental spectacle. It touches individual hopes, fears, and aspirations. The divine feels both distant in its celestial symbolism and immediate in these humble acts of devotion. For a moment, your thoughts return to the courtyard homes you explored earlier. The memory of shaded trees and grinding stone lingers like an echo. Here, the scale is vastly different, yet the underlying purpose remains similar. Both spaces seek to create order in a world shaped by uncertainty. Both offer frameworks through which people understand their place within the vastness of existence. The sun now stands high overhead, casting sharp shadows across the temple steps. Heat radiates from the stone, enveloping you in a shimmering haze. The chant begins to fade, replaced by quieter conversations among priests and attendants. Ritual gives way once more to routine. You sense that your journey will soon lead you into another dimension of Babylonian life. One shaped not by sacred ascent, but by the preservation of knowledge itself. With a final glance at the towering ziggurat, you turn toward a nearby passage where the faint sound of styluses continues to echo, inviting you into the world of scribes and clay. You move beneath the shaded passageway, grateful for the sudden coolness that settles around you like a gentle cloak. The glare of the temple courtyard softens behind you, replaced by dimmer light filtered through narrow openings high in the wall. Your footsteps echo faintly against smooth stone. Somewhere ahead, a rhythmic scratching sound continues, steady and purposeful, like the quiet ticking of an ancient clock. The corridor opens into a long chamber lined with low benches and wooden shelves. Here the air carries a distinctive scent, a mixture of damp clay reed mats and the faint smoke of oil lamps. Sunlight falls in pale rectangles across the floor, illuminating small clouds of dust that drift lazily with each movement. You realize you have entered a place where memory itself is shaped into tangible form. A row of scribes sits cross-legged along one wall, their attention fixed on clay tablets resting in their laps. Each holds a slender stylus cut from reed, its tip pressed into the soft surface with precise, deliberate motions. The sound you heard in the corridor becomes clearer now. It is not a single rhythm, but a quiet chorus of inscribing hands creating an atmosphere of focused calm. Records confirm that Babylonian scribes formed a highly trained intellectual class responsible for maintaining legal codes, astronomical observations, and commercial transactions. Tablets recovered by archaeological teams connected to institutions such as Stanford and Oxford reveal standardized writing exercises used to educate apprentices. You watch as a young student traces wedge-shaped marks under the supervision of an older mentor. His brow furrowed in concentration. You approach a nearby shelf where finished tablets are stacked in careful rows. Their surfaces feel cool and slightly grainy beneath your fingertips. Some bear neat columns of numbers, others display flowing lines of script that recount myths, prayers, or historical decrees. Each piece represents hours of labour and generations of accumulated knowledge. The realization fills you with quiet wonder. Here thought becomes artifact preserved long after voices have fallen silent. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside preserved in a fragment of correspondence describes a scribe reprimanded for composing humorous verses about a local official. The incident suggests that even within this disciplined environment, wit and irreverence occasionally found expression. You imagine the faint smiles that might have accompanied such forbidden creativity. A soft murmur rises from the far end of the chamber. Two scholars lean over a tablet inscribed with astronomical symbols. They speak in low measured tones, gesturing toward the marks as though deciphering a secret language. Their discussion carries the weight of curiosity and uncertainty. Scholars bicker over the interpretation of celestial patterns even in your own time, and here you witness an ancient version of that enduring pursuit. No agreement has been reached on whether Babylonian star law functioned primarily as science religion or a subtle fusion of both. You sit on an empty bench and allow your senses to settle. The coolness of the room contrasts with the heat outside, creating a sense of refuge. A lamp flickers nearby, its flame casting small trembling shadows across the tablets. You notice how the scribes pause occasionally to moisten the clay, keeping it pliable for continued writing. The simple gesture underscores the fragility of their medium. Knowledge must be tended carefully, much like a living thing. Your mind drifts back to the chanting priests and ascending steps of the ziggurat. Here devotion takes a quieter form. It is expressed through patience, discipline, and the faithful recording of events that shape the empire's destiny. The scribes do not raise their voices. They shape the future through the steady pressure of stylus against clay. A breeze slips through a high opening, carrying with it the distant aroma of garden herbs and sun-warmed dust. The world beyond these walls feels far away. Time seems to stretch measured, not by bells or footsteps, but by the gradual accumulation of inscribed lines. You realize that entire lifetimes could unfold within this chamber, dedicated to the pursuit of accuracy and memory. At one table, a scribe carefully copies a royal decree. His movements are unhurried yet precise. Each mark he makes will influence decisions in markets, courts, and temples throughout the city. The weight of responsibility rests lightly on his shoulders, as though familiarity has transformed duty into second nature. Watching him, you sense the invisible threads that connect knowledge to governance and belief. Your fingers brush against a tablet still damp from recent inscription. The clay yields slightly to your touch, leaving a faint impression that will soon harden into permanence. The sensation feels strangely intimate, a reminder that history itself is shaped by countless small gestures repeated across generations. Gradually, the scratching sounds diminish as scribes complete their tasks and set their tools aside. A hush settles over the chamber, broken only by the soft rustle of reed mats. Outside, the city continues its restless motion, yet here the preservation of thought creates a pocket of stillness. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the delicate order of this place. As you step back into the corridor, the light grows brighter and the air warmer. Ahead lies another realm of Babylonian life, one defined by splendor, ceremony, and the intricate hierarchies of royal power. The echo of styluses fades behind you like a fading memory, guiding your thoughts toward the palace precinct waiting just beyond the temple's shadow. The corridor releases you into the brilliance of afternoon light, and for a moment you pause to let your eyes adjust. The air feels heavier, now warmed by hours of sun that have turned the city's brick surfaces into quiet reservoirs of heat. You follow a broad avenue lined with tall walls whose upper edges are decorated with painted motifs. Their colours have softened with age, yet they still suggest the prestige of the district you're entering. Gradually, the architecture begins to change. The dwellings you passed earlier give way to structures of far greater scale. Gateways grow taller, courtyards, wider doorways framed by carved lintels. A faint metallic chime echoes somewhere ahead, followed by the murmur of disciplined voices. You sense you're approaching the royal precinct, a place where power expresses itself not only through stone and ceremony, but through the careful orchestration of daily life. You arrive at a vast open space bordered by the colonnades. The columns rise in orderly ranks, casting long shadows across polished floors. Servants move quietly between them, carrying trays of fruit, folded garments, and gleaming vessels filled with water drawn from hidden wells. Their steps are swift yet measured, as though each movement has been practiced countless times. The scent here is subtle, a blend of clean linen wax smoke and the faint sweetness of crushed flowers scattered along the walkway. A council record preserved on a clay tablet confirms that palace complexes in Babylon functioned as administrative hubs where royal officials coordinated taxation, military logistics, and diplomatic correspondence. Excavations associated with institutions such as Yale and Oxford have revealed intricate floor plans suggesting a hierarchy of access. Certain chambers were reserved for high-ranking advisors, while others accommodated scribes, guards, and visiting dignitaries. Standing in this courtyard, you sense the invisible boundaries that structure interaction within these walls. You walk slowly along the colonnade, your fingertips brushing the cool stone surface of a pillar. Its smoothness contrasts with the rough textures of residential districts. Here, refinement signals authority. A group of musicians rehearses near a shaded alcove, their instruments producing soft, resonant tones that ripple through the still air. The melody feels both ceremonial and soothing, designed perhaps to create an atmosphere of controlled grace. Oddly enough, a curious footnote preserved in a fragment of court correspondence recounts an incident in which a royal servant was reprimanded for allowing a palace peacock to wander into an audience chamber. The episode suggests that even within this environment of strict protocol, moments of unexpected levity could intrude. You imagine the startled expressions of officials confronted by such flamboyant disruption. Ahead, a pair of guards stands at the entrance to an inner hall. Their posture is upright, their spears held with effortless precision. Bronze helmets catch the sunlight, reflecting sharp glints that momentarily dazzle your eyes. You feel a quiet tension in the air, not oppressive but unmistakable. This is a place where decisions affecting entire provinces are made, where alliances are forged and rivalries weighed with careful calculation. Scholars continue to debate the degree of personal influence exercised by Babylonian kings within these palatial spaces. Some argue that royal authority remained highly centralized, with decrees issued directly from the throne. Others suggest that councils of advisors wielded significant power behind the scenes. Arguments divide along interpretive lines shaped by the differing readings of administrative texts and archaeological layouts. As you observe the disciplined choreography of palace life, you sense how both perspectives might hold elements of truth. You step into the inner hall and feel a sudden drop in temperature. Thick walls shield the space from the afternoon heat, creating an atmosphere of subdued calm. Tapestries hang from wooden beams, their woven patterns depicting hunting scenes and mythic creatures. The colours appear muted in the filtered light, yet their craftsmanship speaks of considerable skill. A faint scent of cedarwood lingers, perhaps from chests used to store valuable garments or ceremonial regalia. At the far end of the chamber, a raised platform supports an ornate chair carved from dark timber. It stands empty at this moment, yet its presence dominates the room. You imagine the weight of expectation that gathers here during formal audiences. Courtiers arranged in careful ranks, petitioners presenting gifts, the low murmur of negotiation carried beneath painted ceilings. Your mind drifts briefly to the scribes you observed earlier. Their quiet labour underpins the splendour you witness now. Without records, decrees, and inventories, such a vast apparatus of governance could not function. Babylon's greatness emerges not only from visible grandeur, but from the intricate systems that sustain it. A servant passes by carrying a shallow bowl filled with rose petals. Their fragrance trails behind him, delicate and unexpectedly soothing. The sensory richness of the palace reveals itself in layers inviting you to linger, yet you sense that your path will soon lead outward again, towards spaces where legend and nature intertwine in surprising ways. You step back into the sunlit courtyard and glance toward a distant cluster of terraces rising above the palace walls. Greenery spills over their edges in soft cascades. The sight stirs a quiet curiosity within you. Stories of extraordinary gardens have long been associated with Babylon's royal domain. As you follow the shaded walkway in their direction, the echo of courtly music fades behind you, replaced by the promise of rustling leaves and cool hidden water. The path curves gently upward, leading you away from the structured elegance of the palace courtyard toward a landscape that feels unexpectedly alive with colour and movement. The air shifts as you walk. It grows cooler, touched by moisture that seems out of place in a city built upon sun-baked clay. You hear the faint trickle of flowing water somewhere ahead, accompanied by the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a passing breeze. Soon the terraces come fully into view. Layers of greenery rise above one another in carefully constructed steps, their edges supported by massive stone retaining walls. Vines spill downward in graceful arcs. Clusters of flowering plants brighten the dusty horizon with bursts of crimson violet and pale gold. For a moment it feels as though you have wandered into a dream shaped by both nature and human ambition. You ascend a broad staircase carved into the terrace itself. The stone beneath your feet is worn smooth by countless visitors who have come to marvel at this improbable oasis. As you climb, the scent of damp soil grows stronger. It mingles with the sweetness of blossoms and the faint mineral tang of irrigation channels that carry water upward from the river below. Records confirm that royal building programs in Babylon included extensive garden projects designed to demonstrate both wealth and technical ingenuity. Excavations and textual references examined by researchers linked to institutions such as Oxford and Yale describe systems of pumps, canals and reservoirs that sustained cultivated landscapes within the urban core. The precise appearance of these gardens remains uncertain, yet their symbolic importance is widely acknowledged. At the first terrace you pause beside a stone basin, where water flows continuously in a narrow stream. Its surface catches the sunlight, scattering small reflections across surrounding leaves. You dip your hand into the cool current and feel an immediate sense of relief. The heat of the day seems to dissolve for an instant. Nearby, a gardener tends a row of herbs, trimming them with careful attention. His movements are slow and deliberate, guided by knowledge passed quietly through generations. Oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved in a later chronicle claims that visiting dignitaries sometimes doubted the authenticity of such lush greenery, suspecting hidden reservoirs beneath the terraces. The rumour reveals how extraordinary these gardens appeared to those accustomed to the stark landscapes beyond the city walls. Even wonder could invite scepticism. You continue upward, following a path shaded by overhanging branches. Birds flit between leaves, their calls sharp and lively against the distant hum of urban activity. The higher you climb, the more expansive the view becomes. Babylon spreads below you in layered hues of ochre and bronze. The Euphrates glimmers like a ribbon of polished metal cutting through the plain. From this vantage point, the monumental gate, the temple complex, and the clustered homes you explored earlier appear as interconnected elements of a vast living organism. Scholars remain divided over whether the legendary hanging gardens described in classical sources truly existed in Babylon, or perhaps in another city altogether. Arguments split along archaeological and textual lines, with some researchers pointing to structural remains within palace precincts, while others question the reliability of later accounts. As you stand amid the rustling foliage, the debate feels both distant and immediate. The sensory reality of greenery and water surrounds you, yet its precise historical identity remains elusive. A pavilion stands near the uppermost terrace, its roof supported by slender wooden columns. Inside, cushions are arranged around a low table bearing trays of fruit and cups filled with cool drink. The shaded interior offers respite from the sun's intensity. You sit for a moment listening to the subtle symphony of this cultivated sanctuary. Leaves whisper overhead. Water murmurs along hidden channels. Somewhere below, a musician's distant melody drifts upward, softened by layers of foliage. Your thoughts wander to the palace halls you left behind, their authority manifested through disciplined order and controlled display. Here it expresses itself through abundance and harmony with natural forms. The gardens reveal another dimension of Babylonian power. They transform a harsh environment into fertile refuge, projecting an image of mastery that extends beyond stone walls and ceremonial routes. You rise and walk toward the terrace's edge. A breeze lifts the hem of your garment, carrying with it the mingled scents of blossoms, damp earth, and far-off market fires. The city's noise reaches you as a faint murmur like the distant surf of an unseen sea. For a moment, time feels suspended between past and present, between legend and lived experience. Gradually the light begins to soften. Afternoon yields to the promise of evening. Shadows lengthened across the terraces, creating intricate patterns that shift with every movement of the sun. You sense that night will bring new forms of life to Babylon rhythms, shaped by music, celebration, and communal gathering. With a final glance at the greenery cascading around you, you begin your descent toward the streets below, guided by the glow of approaching torchlight. By the time you reach the lower streets again, the character of the city has begun to change. The fierce brilliance of afternoon fades into a softer amber glow. Shadows stretch across the walls, long and fluid like ink poured slowly across parchment. The air cools at last, releasing the scent of heated brick and dusty streets that have absorbed the sun's warmth throughout the day. As twilight settles over Babylon, the city does not retreat into silence. Instead, it transforms. Torches begin to appear along the avenues, their flames flickering in shallow bronze holders mounted beside doorways and temple gates. Small lamps glow in windows, their light trembling like captured stars. The atmosphere becomes alive with anticipation. You sense it in the rising murmur of voices, the steady beat of drums, somewhere beyond the temple district, and the sudden laughter that echoes through the streets. You follow the sound of music toward a wide public square, where people are already gathering. Lanterns hang from wooden poles, casting golden circles across the ground. The flickering light reflects in polished jewellery and in the glazed surfaces of nearby walls. You step into the edge of the crowd and feel the energy shift around you. Daytime commerce and labour have given way to something more communal, more celebratory. A group of musicians sits near the centre of the square. One plucks a lyre whose notes ripple softly through the warm evening air. Another taps a frame drum in steady rhythm, while a third blows into a slender reed pipe that produces a haunting, almost hypnotic melody. The music flows through the crowd like a gentle current, drawing people closer together. Historical records confirm that Babylon hosted numerous public festivals dedicated to its gods, particularly the great celebrations honouring Marduk, the city's chief deity. Clay tablets studied by researchers at institutions such as Stanford and Oxford describe elaborate processions, ritual feasts, and communal gatherings that could last several days. These events strengthened civic identity while reinforcing the bond between divine favour and royal authority. Tonight's gathering feels smaller than the grand ceremonies described in those tablets, yet its spirit carries the same sense of shared participation. Children weave through the crowd, chasing one another beneath the lanterns. Vendors move quietly along the edges, offering cups of sweet date wine and trays of roasted barley cakes. The scent of warm bread drifts through the square, mingling with the smoky aroma of torches. Oddly enough, a curious footnote preserved in a damaged festival record mentions that some citizens were known to sneak away from formal ceremonies to hold their own unofficial celebrations in nearby streets. Authorities occasionally complained about excessive singing and dancing after midnight. Listening now to the rising laughter around you, you sense that such unofficial revelry must have been irresistible. A group of dancers enters the open space near the musicians. Their garments shimmer with small metal ornaments that catch the torchlight as they move. The rhythm of the drums grows more energetic, and soon the dancers' steps become faster, their motions weaving intricate patterns across the ground. The crowd claps along, some joining in with enthusiastic if imperfect coordination. You notice how the night air carries every sound more clearly than the busy hours of daylight. Each note of music, each burst of laughter seems suspended briefly before fading into the darkening sky. Above you, the first stars begin to appear sharp and luminous against the deepening blue. Scholars continue to debate how much freedom ordinary citizens possess during such gatherings. Some argue that authorities maintained close supervision to prevent unrest within large crowds. Others suggest that these festivals provided rare moments when social barriers softened and communal joy briefly eclipsed hierarchy. No final agreement has emerged, leaving historians to piece together clues from scattered records and artistic depictions. You lean against a low wall at the edge of the square and watch the celebration unfold. The torchlight flickers across faces both young and old, illuminating expressions of contentment, curiosity, and quiet pride. Here, beneath the open sky, Babylon reveals yet another dimension of its identity. It is not only a centre of trade worship and governance, it is a place where people gather simply to share the fleeting beauty of an evening. A breeze drifts through the square, carrying the scent of burning resin and distant gardens. The music slows, gradually shifting into a gentler melody that seems to invite reflection rather than exuberance. Some of the dancers pause to catch their breath, laughing softly as they step aside to drink from clay cups. You realize that night has fully embraced the city now. The lanterns glow brighter against the darkness, guiding travelers along winding streets. Somewhere beyond the square, soldiers patrol the walls and merchants secure their stalls for the morning to come. Babylon continues its endless cycle of activity, each hour revealing a new facet of its life. For a moment you remain where you are, letting the music somewhat settle around you like a comforting blanket. Soon your path will carry you beyond celebration and into the quieter realities that sustain this powerful empire. But tonight's gathering lingers in your memory as a reminder that even the greatest cities are at heart communities of shared human experience. The music fades gradually behind you as you leave the torchlit square and follow a quieter street that curves toward the outer districts of the city. Night has settled fully now, wrapping Babylon in a deep blue hush, broken only by scattered lamplight and the distant murmur of voices. The air feels cooler against your skin, touched by a faint breeze drifting in from the river plain. As you walk, the character of the surroundings begins to change once more. The dense clusters of homes give way to broader open spaces where shadows stretch unbroken across packed earth. The scent here is different, sharper somehow. You detect traces of leather-oiled metal and the faint smoke of cooking fires that burn low and steady. The sounds too are altered. Instead of laughter or music, you hear measured footsteps, the creak of wooden harness, and the occasional snort of a restless horse. Ahead, a line of torches marks the entrance to a military encampment set just inside the city's formidable walls. You approach slowly, aware of the quiet vigilance that defines this place. Soldiers move with purposeful restraint, their silhouettes outlined by flickering flames. Bronze helmets glint softly in the shifting light. Spears stand stacked in orderly rows, their tips catching pale reflections from the stars above. Records confirm that Babylon's strength at its peak relied heavily on disciplined military organization. Administrative tablets studied by researchers at institutions such as Yale and Stanford detail provisions for garrisons stationed both within the capital and along distant frontiers. These documents describe ration distributions, weapon maintenance schedules, and the careful coordination required to sustain imperial campaigns across vast territories. You pause near a training ground where a small group of men practices formations under the watchful eye of an older officer. Their movements are deliberate, synchronized even in the dimness. The rhythmic thud of sandals striking earth echoes faintly across the open space. Each step seems to reinforce an invisible structure of authority that extends far beyond the city walls. Oddly enough, one curious aside preserved in a soldier's letter recounts a complaint about the monotony of nightly drills. He described a dreaming of market noise and festival songs while standing guard beneath cold stars. The fragment offers a glimpse into the human side of military life, reminding you that discipline often coexists with longing for ordinary pleasures. You continue walking along the perimeter path, your gaze drawn upwards to the immense fortifications that define Babylon's outer boundary. The walls rise in layered tiers, massive and imposing even in the darkness. Their surfaces feel cool and slightly damp beneath your palm, absorbing the night's dew. You imagine the countless hours of labour required to construct such defences, each brick laid with the intention of preserving the city's prosperity. Scholars continue to dispute the extent to which Babylonian military dominance relied on technological innovation versus sheer numerical strength. Some argue that superior siege tactics and logistical networks played decisive roles in imperial expansion. Others suggest that psychological impact reinforced by monumental architecture proved equally important. Arguments diverge along interpretive lines, leaving room for ongoing investigation into the complex dynamics of ancient warfare. A low murmur rises from a nearby fire where a handful of soldiers sits sharing a simple meal. The glow illuminates their faces in warm tones, softening the rigid lines of duty. You hear quiet conversation about distant provinces, unfamiliar climates, and long journeys across deserts and mountains. Their words carry both pride and fatigue. Empire, you realize, is sustained not only by grand vision, but by the endurance of individuals who serve its ambitions. A horse stamps its hoof impatiently, sending a small cloud of dust into the lamplight. The animal's breath forms a pale mist in the cooling air. You step closer, feeling the texture of its mane beneath your fingers. It flicks its ears, but remains calm, accustomed to the rhythms of camp life. Leather reins creak softly as a handler adjusts their position. Beyond the encampment, the open plain stretches into darkness. The stars above seem sharper here, unfiltered by the glow of festival lanterns or market fires. You sense the vastness of the empire in that silent horizon. Somewhere out there, caravans travel under moonlight. Armies march along river valleys. Messages carried on clay tablets or spoken by envoys shape the destiny of countless communities. Your thoughts return briefly to the music and laughter of the square. The contrast feels profound. Babylon contains both celebration and vigilance, abundance and uncertainty. Its prosperity rests on the delicate balance between internal harmony and external threat. Standing beneath the towering walls, you understand more clearly how the city's greatness depends on forces both visible and unseen. A wind stirs across the plain, carrying with it the faint scent of wild grasses and distant water. The torches flicker in response, their flames bending momentarily before straightening again. The soldiers resume their drills, their silhouettes moving with renewed focus. Night deepens around you, inviting reflection on the journeys that lie beyond the city's protective embrace. With a final glance at the glowing campfires and the steady line of fortifications, you turn back toward the inner streets. There are still more layers of Babylon's life to discover before dawn returns. Somewhere ahead, travellers from distant lands gather in conversation, bringing with them stories that reveal how this remarkable city stands at the crossroads of the ancient world. You follow a lantern-lit road that curves gently back toward the heart of the city. The night feels deeper now, yet Babylon does not sleep. A soft hum of activity continues, shaped less by celebration and more by quiet exchange. The air carries new scents as you approach a district where travellers gather. You detect unfamiliar spices, oiled wood from wagon wheels, and the faint musk of animals resting after long journeys. Ahead, a broad courtyard opens between rows of guest houses and storage buildings. Torches burn low in iron brackets along the walls, casting steady amber light that pools across the ground. Groups of men and women sit in small circles beside stacked bundles of trade goods. Their garments vary in texture and colour, revealing origins that stretch far beyond the Euphrates plain. Some wear wool cloaks fastened with bronze pins. Others display embroidered hems or leather sandals suited for harsher terrain. For a moment it feels as though you have stepped into a living map of the ancient world. You move closer to a fire where several travellers share a pot of steaming broth. The aroma of unfamiliar herbs rises in gentle spirals, warming the cool night air. Their conversation flows in a mixture of languages punctuated by gestures that bridge gaps in understanding. Laughter breaks out when one storyteller dramatizes his account of crossing a windswept desert. Even without grasping every word, you sense the power of shared experience that binds these strangers together. Records confirm that Babylon's prosperity depended heavily on its role as a crossroads for long-distance trade. Clay tablets examined by researchers associated with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford document shipments of tin, textiles, precious stones, and agricultural products arriving from regions as distant as Anatolia and the Persian Gulf. These transactions required not only economic skill but cultural negotiation, shaping a city where diversity became part of daily life. You sit beside a merchant who carefully unwraps a bundle of dyed cloth. Its colours shimmer even in torchlight, suggesting techniques refined through generations of craftsmanship. He invites you to feel the fabric's softness. It glides beneath your fingers like flowing water. In return, he points toward the stars and recounts his route across mountain passes illuminated only by moonlight. His voice carries both pride and quiet fatigue. Oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved in a damaged travel account describes a caravan leader who claimed to have brought exotic animals into Babylon as gifts for the royal court. The story mentions a small spotted creature that startled onlookers by climbing a palace wall. Whether exaggerated or true, such tales reveal how trade routes transported not only goods but wonder itself. Nearby, a scribe records the arrival of new cargo on a damp tablet held close to the fire for warmth. The faint scratching of his stylus reminds you of the chamber you visited earlier. Knowledge and commerce intertwine here just as they do within temple precincts. Every bundle and contract forms part of an intricate network linking Babylon to distant landscapes. Scholars continue to debate the extent to which cultural exchange influenced local customs within the city. Some argue that foreign traders introduced new artistic styles and culinary practices that gradually blended with established traditions. Others maintain that Babylonian identity remained resilient, absorbing external influences while preserving its core values. Arguments diverge along disciplinary lines, leaving historians to interpret fragmentary evidence with care. You rise and walk along the courtyard's edge, observing the variety of goods stacked beneath woven coverings. Amphorae sealed with bitumen hold fragrant oils. Wooden crates contain polished metal tools and carved ornaments. A tethered camel shifts its weight, emitting a low, rumbling call that resonates in the stillness. Its presence alone speaks of journeys across vast expanses of sand. A gentle breeze passes through the open gate, carrying the distant murmur of river water, and the faint echo of temple bells marking the late hour. The city feels interconnected in ways both tangible and subtle. Trade routes converge here like arteries feeding a vital heart. Stories converge as well, shaping collective understanding of the wider world. Your thoughts drift to the soldiers guarding the walls and the celebrants dancing beneath lanterns earlier in the evening. Each group plays a role in sustaining Babylon's complex life. The travellers you see now contribute another essential dimension. They bring news ideas and aspirations that ripple outward through markets and courts alike. The fire beside which you first sat begins to burn low, its embers glowing softly against the darkness. One by one, the merchants settle into sleep beneath woolen cloaks, trusting in the city's protection. You linger for a moment longer, absorbing the quiet resilience that defines this gathering of distant lives. Soon you turn away, guided by the pale glow of the moonlight along the street ahead. Babylon's night continues to unfold, revealing yet more layers of order and uncertainty woven into its enduring story. The street ahead grows quieter as you leave the courtyard of travelers behind. Night deepens into its most contemplative hour. Moonlight washes the mud brick walls in pale silver tones, softening their edges and lending the city an almost dreamlike stillness. Yet beneath this calm surface you sense the presence of systems that keep Babylon ordered even while most of its inhabitants sleep. You follow a narrow passage that opens unexpectedly into a public square far less festive than the one you visited earlier. Here the torches burn lower, their flames steady and watchful rather than celebratory. A small group has gathered near a raised platform of stone. Their murmured voices carry a note of tension. You step closer, drawn by curiosity, and realize you are witnessing the machinery of justice at work. A magistrate stands beside a wooden table on which rests a clay tablet covered in fresh inscriptions. His expression is composed almost impassive as he listens to two men presenting their dispute. One gestures emphatically toward a broken cartwheel lying nearby. The other responds with controlled indignation, his voice rising briefly before settling again into careful explanation. The exchange feels formal, yet deeply human-shaped by frustration and the hope for resolution. Records confirm that Babylonian society operated under complex legal traditions rooted in earlier codifications, such as the famous laws associated with Hammurabi. Administrative tablets studied by researchers connected to institutions like Yale and Oxford reveal ongoing refinements to judicial procedures during later imperial periods. These documents describe officials tasked with interpreting regulations governing trade property and personal conduct. You notice how the gathered citizens observe the proceedings in respectful silence. Justice here is not hidden behind closed doors. It unfolds within communal space, reinforcing shared expectations about order and responsibility. The magistrate presses his stylus into the damp clay recording testimony with deliberate care. The faint scraping sound echoes across the square like the ticking of an unseen clock. Oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved in a fragmentary legal commentary mentions a case involving a baker accused of selling underweight loaves. The dispute escalated into a heated argument about the fairness of market inspections. Such anecdotes suggest that everyday grievances could illuminate broader tensions within urban life. A guard stands at the edge of the platform, his spear resting lightly against his shoulder. The bronze tip glints in the moonlight, a quiet reminder that law and enforcement remain closely intertwined. You sense the delicate balance that sustains this great city. Commerce thrives, festivals flourish, yet underlying it all is a framework designed to prevent chaos from taking root. Scholars continue to debate the degree of consistency achieved in Babylonian legal practice. Some argue that written codes ensured predictable outcomes across diverse cases. Others maintain that local customs and individual interpretation introduced significant variation. No agreement has been reached on how uniformly justice was experienced by different social groups. Observing the measured exchange before you, the question feels both urgent and elusive. A breeze carries the scent of extinguished torches and distant river mist. The coolness settles around your shoulders, sharpening your awareness of the night's quiet intensity. One by one, witnesses step forward to speak. Their voices remain calm, yet each word seems weighted with consequence. The magistrate listens without interruption, his posture steady as stone. At last he delivers a decision in a tone that brooks little argument. The two disputants bow their heads, acknowledging the outcome with restrained acceptance. The crowd disperses gradually, conversations resuming in softer tones. You remain where you are for a moment, reflecting on the role of law in shaping the city's collective identity. Your thoughts drift to the bustling markets and lively festivals you encountered earlier. Those scenes of abundance and joy rest upon structures of accountability such as this one. Babylon's prosperity depends not only on trade and ritual, but on the maintenance of trust among its citizens. The realization deepens your appreciation for the complexity of urban life in this ancient metropolis. A final torch is lowered, its flame dimming to a glowing ember before fading into darkness. Moonlight now illuminates the square alone, casting long shadows that stretch across the empty platform. The magistrate gathers his tablets and departs without ceremony, leaving behind only the memory of his authority. You turn away and follow a gently rising path that leads toward higher ground. Above the rooftops, the stars shine with unusual clarity. Somewhere priests and scholars prepare to read their silent pattern, seeking meaning in celestial motion. The city's nocturnal rhythms continue guiding you toward another realm where observation and belief merge beneath the vastness of the night sky. You follow the ascending path until the city's sounds grow distant and muted, as though wrapped in layers of shadow and cool night air. The ground beneath your feet becomes firmer, less worn by traffic. A sense of quiet anticipation settles over you. Above the clustered rooftops, a broad terrace opens toward the sky, its stone surface pale beneath the glow of countless stars. Here the air feels different. It carries a faint metallic chill and the subtle scent of extinguished incense. Lamps burn low along the terrace edge, their flames shielded by small clay screens that direct light downward. Beyond them stretches the vast dome of the heavens, brilliant and seemingly close enough to touch. A group of scholars and temple priests stands near a low table covered with tablets and simple measuring instruments. One holds a cord marked with evenly spaced knots. Another adjusts a slender rod set upright in a carved base. Their movements are calm, deliberate, shaped by long habit. You realize you've arrived at a place where Babylon's observers of the sky pursue their nightly vigil. Records confirm that Babylonian astronomer priests developed sophisticated methods for tracking celestial patterns. Tablets examined by researchers connected to institutions such as Oxford and Stanford reveal detailed logs of planetary movements, lunar cycles, and seasonal changes. These observations informed agricultural planning, ritual calendars, and interpretations of divine will. You step closer, careful not to disturb the quiet concentration that defines the terrace. A scholar traces lines across a damp tablet, with his stylus noting the position of a bright star rising near the horizon. The faint scratching sound blends with the whisper of night wind moving across stone. For a moment, the entire city seems suspended beneath this patient act of recording. Oddly enough, one curious aside preserved in a later commentary suggests that certain astrologers competed subtly over whose predictions proved most accurate. Friendly rivalries, it seems, extended even into the realm of cosmic interpretation. You watch now as two observers exchange thoughtful glances before adjusting their instruments in unison. The stars above appear sharper here than anywhere else you have stood tonight. Without the distraction of market fires or festival lanterns, their light pierces the darkness with astonishing clarity. Constellations unfold in intricate patterns that hint at stories older than the city itself. You feel a quiet sense of awe mingled with introspection. Human ambition, so evident in Babylon's walls and temples, feels small against this immense celestial backdrop. Scholars continue to debate the precise boundary between science and spirituality in Babylonian skywatching. Some argue that systematic observation laid foundations for later astronomical traditions. Others maintain that predictive omen reading remained the primary objective. Arguments divide along interpretive lines, reflecting broader questions about how ancient knowledge systems should be understood. Standing beneath the silent constellations, you sense that both perspectives illuminate part of the truth. A breeze passes across the terrace, carrying the distant scent of river water and the faint rustle of palm fronds far below. One of the priests begins a low chant, his voice barely more than a murmur. The sound seems to resonate with the night itself, creating an atmosphere of contemplative stillness. Another scholar gestures toward a cluster of stars and speaks softly, explaining their significance to a younger apprentice whose eyes shine with curiosity. You rest your hand on the cool surface of a stone parapet and gaze outward. Babylon stretches beneath you like a darkened tapestry punctuated by occasional flickers of lamplight. Somewhere in its winding streets, merchants sleep beside their goods. Guards patrol the walls. Families dream within shaded courtyards. The city lives and breathes even in this quiet hour, sustained by cycles both earthly and celestial. Your thoughts drift briefly to the flowing Euphrates you encountered at dawn. Its steady current now glimmers faintly in the moonlight, reflecting fragments of starlight like scattered jewels. The connection between river and sky feels profound. Both guide human understanding of time and change, shaping rituals and routines across generations. A scholar gently lifts a tablet and places it among others arranged in careful sequence. Knowledge accumulates here night after night, forming a record of cosmic patterns that will influence decisions throughout the empire. Watching this quiet dedication, you sense how Babylon's greatness extends beyond visible structures into realms of thought and interpretation. Gradually, the chill of approaching dawn begins to touch the air. Lamps flicker as fuel runs low. One by one, the observers gather their instruments and descend toward the temple precinct below. You remain a moment longer, absorbing the vast stillness that surrounds you. Soon the city will stir again with the first sounds of morning. Yet before that renewal arrives, another subtle transformation waits. You turn from the parapet and begin your descent, aware that whispers of change move through Babylon's corridors like the first hints of a distant storm. The path downward from the terrace feels steeper than you remember, perhaps because the silence of the night has deepened into something almost tangible. Babylon lies beneath you in shadow, its familiar forms softened into indistinct shapes. Only the highest walls and temple towers remain clearly outlined against the paling horizon. A faint grey light begins to gather in the east, not yet dawn, but a quiet promise of its return. As you walk, the city's sounds remain subdued. A dog barks somewhere far away, answered by another across the rooftops. The soft creak of a cartwheel drifts through the still air. You sense that even in its moments of rest, Babylon carries an undercurrent of tension, a subtle awareness that power and prosperity are never entirely secure. You pass through a narrow street where torches have burned down to glowing embers. Their dying light casts wavering shadows across the walls, making them seem to shift and breathe. The scent of cooled ash lingers, mingling with the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers growing behind unseen courtyards. The atmosphere feels reflective, almost melancholic, as though the city itself is contemplating its own future. Historical records confirm that Babylon's dominance during the Neo-Babylonian period was both impressive and precarious. Administrative texts studied by researchers at institutions such as Stanford and Oxford reveal ongoing concerns about maintaining loyalty in distant provinces and securing trade routes against disruption. Even at the height of its splendour, the empire faced challenges that demanded constant vigilance. You continue along the street until it opens onto a small overlook near the inner wall. From here, you can see the Euphrates winding through the dark landscape like a band of polished stone. A handful of guards stands nearby, their cloaks drawn tightly against the cool air. They speak in hushed tones about rumours carried by recent caravans. Fragments of conversation reach your ears. Names of distant rulers, reports of shifting alliances. The words feel like distant thunder, barely audible yet charged with significance. Oddly enough, one curious aside, preserved in a later chronicle, recounts a prophetic dream attributed to a palace official who claimed to have seen the city's walls crumble beneath a storm of sand. Whether interpreted as superstition or political commentary, such stories reveal how anxiety can take symbolic form long before events unfold. You lean against the stone parapet and let the night wind brush across your face. The surface beneath your hand is cool and slightly damp with dew. For a moment, your thoughts drift back through the experiences of this long journey. The bustling markets, shaded courtyards, sacred rituals, and joyous festivals all seem suspended in memory, like scenes painted on the inside of your mind. Babylon feels vast and vibrant, yet also fragile in ways not immediately visible. Scholars continue to debate how quickly the city's fortunes shifted in subsequent generations. Some argue that external conquest played the decisive role in altering its trajectory. Others emphasize internal dynamics such as economic strain and administrative complexity. Arguments divide along interpretive lines, reminding you that history often resists simple explanations. Standing here in the quiet before dawn, the question of decline feels less like an abstract concept and more like a living uncertainty. A faint glow begins to touch the horizon. Birds stir in the palm groves near the river, their calls tentative at first, then gradually more confident. The guards straighten their posture, scanning the landscape with renewed alertness. You sense the cycle of vigilance continuing without pause. Babylon endures through watchfulness as much as through celebration. You leave the overlook and follow a winding lane that descends towards the water. The sky lightens further with each step, revealing familiar shapes in softer detail. Smoke begins to rise from a few early hearths. A woman carrying a jar walks past you in silence, her breath forming pale clouds in the chill air. Life prepares itself once more for the tasks of a new day. Yet beneath this gentle renewal lingers the awareness that no city, however magnificent, escapes the currents of time. Power shifts, empires rise and fall. The realization does not diminish Babylon's grandeur. Instead, it deepens your appreciation for the human stories woven into its fleeting moment of supremacy. As the first rays of sunrise begin to color the eastern sky, you approach the riverbank once more. The familiar murmur of flowing water greets you like an old companion. You sense that your journey is nearing its quiet conclusion, guided by reflections that stretch beyond the visible world into the enduring realm of memory and legacy. The river appears before you again just as the first true light of dawn spills across the horizon. A thin band of rose and gold spreads slowly through the sky, dissolving the last shadows that clung to Babylon's sleeping streets. You walk down the familiar slope toward the Euphrates, your footsteps soft against the damp earth. The air feels newly washed, carrying the cool freshness that arrives in the quiet hour between night's retreat and the day's first stirrings. For a moment it feels as though you have come full circle. You stand at the water's edge where your journey began, watching the current glide past with patient certainty. The surface reflects fragments of the waking city. Temple towers rise in pale silhouette. Smoke begins to curl upward from hearths, hidden within clustered homes. Somewhere a bronze bell sounds, once its tone gentle and measured. The rhythm of Babylon resumes steady as the river itself. Records confirm that the Euphrates shaped the city's existence from its earliest days, sustaining agriculture, trade, and daily survival. Archaeological studies undertaken by scholars at institutions such as Yale and Oxford have revealed ancient irrigation channels and arbor structures that testify to centuries of careful adaptation. Standing here now, you sense how water has always served as both lifeline and silent witness to Babylon's unfolding story. You crouch beside this bank and trail your fingers through the cool flow. The sensation feels grounding, almost meditative. Nearby, a fisherman prepares his nets with practiced movements. He nods politely in your direction before turning his attention back to the river. His quiet focus reflects a continuity of purpose that transcends imperial ambition. Life here persists through routine as much as through spectacle. Oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved in a later traveller's account describes children racing small reed boats along this very stretch of water, cheering as they competed to see whose vessel reached the bend first. The image lingers in your mind as a reminder that even in a city renowned for its grandeur, moments of simple joy shape daily existence. You rise and walk slowly along the riverbank, reflecting on all you have witnessed. The monumental gates and ceremonial avenues, the shaded courtyards and bustling markets, the terraces of greenery defying the desert's austerity. The temple chants, palace rituals, and scholarly vigils beneath the stars. Each experience forms part of a vast mosaic that defines what life was truly like in Babylon at its peak. Scholars continue to debate how individuals within this complex society perceived their place in the empire's grand narrative. Some argue that civic pride fostered a strong sense of belonging. Others suggest that uncertainty and ambition coexisted in delicate tension. Arguments diverge along interpretive lines, leaving modern observers to reconstruct emotional landscapes from fragments of text and stone. As you gaze across the river, the debate feels less important than the lived reality you have imagined into being. The sun climbs higher, warming the air with gentle persistence. Light spreads across the water in shimmering paths that seem to invite contemplation. You notice how the city's colours begin to sharpen once more. Ochre walls glow softly. Reed mats are shaken free of dust. Voices rise in greeting as neighbours step into the streets. Babylon awakens again, ready to continue its intricate dance of commerce, devotion and governance. Your journey draws toward its quiet close. You sit upon a flat stone near the bank and allow your thoughts to settle. The river's steady murmur becomes a soothing companion, guiding your breathing into a slow, unhurried rhythm. The memories of towering structures and vibrant gatherings fade gently into softer impressions. You no longer feel the urgency to observe every detail. Instead, you simply exist within the atmosphere of this ancient place. The wind moves through the palm trees with a faint whisper, like distant voices recalling forgotten stories. A bird glides low over the water, its reflection rippling briefly before dissolving into silver fragments. You watch without striving to interpret, allowing sensation to replace analysis. Babylon, with all its complexity, becomes a quiet presence, rather than an overwhelming spectacle. Gradually the pace of your awareness slows further. The city's sounds blur into a comforting background hum. Market calls soften. Footsteps grow less distinct. Even the river's movement seems to settle into a deeper, more tranquil cadence. You feel as though you're drifting at the edge of wakefulness and dream, suspended between past and present. The warmth of the rising sun touches your face with gentle reassurance. Time loosens its hold. You realize that the grandeur you have witnessed does not vanish simply because centuries pass. It lingers in stories, in ruins, in the quiet curiosity of those who imagine walking these same streets. The essence of Babylon endures as a whisper carried forward through generations, inviting reflection rather than conquest. Your breathing grows slower, calmer. The palm leaves rustle once more, then fall still. The water continues its patient journey toward distant horizons. You allow your eyes to close, trusting the river's rhythm to guide you into rest. Images of blue glazed gates, terraced gardens, and torchlit festivals drift gently across your mind before fading into soft, luminous haze. You're safe here in this imagined dawn. The city recedes into memory like a dream dissolving at first light. Only the quiet sensation of presence remains, the cool touch of water, the warmth of sunlit stone, the distant echo of a bell that no longer needs to be heard. Let yourself drift. Let the story settle into silence. Sweet dreams.